be overjoyed. And, oh boy, was I wrong. When I asked if she was okay, she went completely off on me saying I was ruining the bloodline and that she refused to believe her bloodline would be destroyed by a spick like me. Her comment floored me, and I returned without saying a word. I told my husband what mother-in-law noted, and he was visibly upset. He told me her opinion didn't matter and that the baby and I were all he needed. Fast forward 6 months, and our beautiful baby girl was thriving. She had beautiful tan skin, blue eyes, and long black luscious curls. I don't think I have ever fallen in love like I did when I finally met her. She was worth everything. My mother-in-law always hated my daughter's hair, commented about how it looked like a nest and suggested cutting it off. I always shut her down because her hair is very thick and beautiful. In this situation, my husband's job requires him to travel out of state. I also work, so I always leave my daughter with my parents when I have to work. One day I got a call that my mother was in a car accident and was rushed to the hospital. I drove to my parents' house as fast as possible to get my dad and daughter. I didn't want to take my daughter to the hospital, so I called my husband, and he suggested leaving our daughter with his parents for a while, and he would be on the first flight back. Luckily, there was a flight the same day, so my daughter wouldn't be with my in-laws for much time. I should also add that this would be the first time mother-in-law is with the baby without one of us. I dropped the baby off and headed to the hospital with my father. If anyone was wondering, my mom wasn't severely injured, just a minor concussion and a fractured wrist, but if you've ever been to the hospital, you'd know that the waiting time is incredibly long. So, about 5 hours later, we were finally ready to go home. My husband is on his way from the airport, and we decided to meet at his in-laws' house. When I got to the house, I knocked on the door multiple times but to no avail, which was weird because the lights were on. I started calling my mother-in-law because she might not hear me. I called 4 times, but there was no answer, so now I'm starting to get worried. I start banging on the door like a crazy person when my father-in-law pulls into the driveway and asks. I started explaining to him, and he quickly opens the door. I start yelling for my mother-in-law, and I get no response. I run upstairs while father-in-law searches downstairs. When I reach the bedroom, what I saw utterly broke my heart. I see my mother-in-law trying to wake my baby, who is panicking. I look at my daughter, who is completely red and swollen. Her hair is short and blonde. The moment I saw this, I started yelling like a crazy person, grabbed my daughter, and yelled at father-in-law to call an ambulance. As I run down the stairs with my baby, my husband arrives. I'm screaming and crying, spewing incoherent words. After an eternity, the ambulance arrived, and we rushed to the ER. They took my baby and started doing everything they could to save her. Mother-in-law stayed home, and my parents went home to rest, which is understandable. I finally explained to them what had happened, and it's safe to say that my husband and father-in-law were furious. About 2 hours in, my mother-in-law arrives, and without thinking, I jump on her and start screaming and hitting her. My husband manages to get me off of her, and father-in-law escorts her out of the hospital. The doctors finally came out and told me my daughter would be okay. She was allergic to all the chemicals, so they had to shave off the remainder of her hair. He also says that if I hadn't found her when I did, her chances of making it would have been close to none. My husband and I were relieved to hear our baby girl was okay. We stayed overnight in the hospital and were good to go. When we got home, my husband and I had a serious conversation and decided to go no contact with mother-in-law. I would leave my job to stay with my daughter until she was ready to start school, as I no longer wanted to take any chances. After a while, our phones began getting bombarded with messages from relatives, some taking our side and the rest taking mother-in-law's side, saying that I was an a-hole for attacking her as it wasn't going to help my baby. We took it to social media and shared that we would be going no contact with mother-in-law and filing for a restraining order, and we would not hesitate to block and go and see anyone else who decides to defend her actions. I also wanted to add that father-in-law has agreed to divorce mother-in-law as he cannot stand to look at her, so at least my daughter will get to grow up with her paternal grandfather.